Yes, this is one of the most epic rifle reviews that you are ever going to watch. Make sure that you watch the whole thing, even though it is kind of long, because this rifle has been months and months in testing, and every time that I conquered a new challenge or went out on a hunt, I kept thinking of something new that this rifle would probably be good at, and then it turned out that it actually was good at it. We have 9 videos in the playlist for the CMMG Mark III DTR2. I'm going to put a link to the playlist in the description box or on the sidebar somewhere. I'm Kyle Broderick, welcome to the Social Regressive, and we're going to take a close look at the rifle today, what makes it work, its various parts. We're going to take a look at its accuracy, its performance, and then we're going to talk about those challenges and how it all kind of culminated and how I kind of perceive this rifle and what kind of folks would actually like something like this. Before we jump in, I just wanted to thank the patrons of the Destructive Arts that keep the lights on around here. If anybody wants to chip in $1 or $2 a month, I'll put a link to Patreon around here somewhere. Thank you very much to CMMG for loaning me the rifle for this very long review. Thank you to Bushnell and Warren for some of the other equipment that we're playing with here today. I have a video coming out where we're going to discuss this build and how it has worked out in a hunting scenario. I want to talk about how all the work that went into building this rifle out and getting it to just one kind of perfect shot right through the lungs of a hog running at 400 yards. So yeah, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell down below so you see when new videos come out. We also have a new project rifle that's about to kick off, I swear. And yeah, we're going to talk more about this rifle a little bit, and we have a couple other videos coming out on other topics. I'll see you guys around there. But for now, let's dig into the rifle and see what makes this so special. Let's start at the business end of the rifle and work our way back. This is not the muzzle brake that came on it. This is actually the attachment for the YHM titanium silencer that you see right here. This is not actually a very good muzzle brake, I don't think. In some of the testing that I've done, there doesn't seem to be a massive difference between having this attached and just having no muzzle brake at all. But it does make a good attachment point. The new YHM brakes that are out there that have more of the traditional baffle style, those are very effective. I've been able to test one of those on my AR-15. I highly recommend those. This one, this kind of older style, you might want to skip this and go for one of the newer ones. But yeah, overall that all worked out really well. But this is the tiny little muzzle brake that came on the rifle originally, and this is surprisingly effective. It has a couple of ports pointing upward, as you can see, and then it has basically just one kind of baffle area in there for venting gases out the side. And this thing actually works really darn well. I've been very happy with this. You couple this with the semi-automatic gas system inside the rifle for also helping to mitigate recoil, and you definitely have a rifle that kind of feels like a .223 when you're shooting. It is not much of a punch at all. You can see that the stainless barrel, which is 24 inches in length, has some taper to it, and they have kind of milled out some sections over here to help reduce some of the weight, especially out on the muzzle end. But really, this is still not a stand and shoot rifle. This is a heavy, heavy rifle, and one that you will not really ever want to shoot offhand. You could probably take 1 or 2 shots at a close range target, but that's about it. The barrel under here is quite thick inside this handguard. The handguard itself, as you can see, it's Picatinny on top, M-LOK across the sides right here. And this has a beautiful kind of a slate gray, slightly bluish cast Cerakote on it. You can get a bunch of different Cerakote options straight from the factory. You can get some that are more deserty or more foresty, like greens and bronzes and tans and things like that. But the overall effect on this, I want you to take a look. To me, this just kind of ends up looking like, it looks like it belongs on the deck of a naval ship. You know what I mean? Like a destroyer or something, or a cruiser. This looks like a deck gun on there. This has a really cool look to it. You know, maybe if I intended this entirely for hunting, yeah, I'd go for one of the greens or tans. But I'm really digging this gray. This is really, really neat looking. One of the things that I also found about Cerakote is that what you see in real life is also what works under night vision.
There are certain coatings and, for example, anodizing on a bunch of the other scopes and other things that I have that if you look at it through night vision, under infrared light, it actually reflects back silver. It's if it's not coated at all. But the Cerakote actually absorbs the light, and it looks really neat in night vision. The CMMG Mark III DTR2 is essentially an AR-10, and as such, there are some compatibility issues because everybody makes their AR-10s a little bit differently. It's not like an AR-15. There really isn't any kind of consistent dimension or basis for any of them. These are going to be very proprietary. You might be able to swap out lowers or something or bolts, but it's pretty likely not. That's just the way that it runs. But at least you're able to get compatible magazines. It's easy to get AR-10 mags. This is a Magpul PMag, a 20 rounder. This worked out flawlessly in our testing. We had no issues with it. The only feeding issues that we had were user error. So yeah, I've been very pleased with how this fed and extracted. I've always been happy with PMags. They have always worked out really well for me, whether it's the AI CS configuration for bolt action rifles or AR-15 mags, whatever. PMags just rock. Looking at the gas ports on the side of the gun, you can see that this is direct gas impingement. This is not a piston system, so it does have the gas tube that runs through here, goes into the bolt carrier, and then finally to push the whole thing back. And I don't think that's a problem at all. I think direct gas impingement is just fine in this case. Yeah, it did get pretty dirty in here when we were shooting suppressed. I don't know if it would have made a difference if we were shooting a piston gun or not. Piston might have just added extra weight out on the front of the rifle. Direct gas has been working just fine right here. Moving back, here is the Geissele SSA trigger. And if you're wondering what separates the Mark III DTR from the Mark III DTR2, it is this trigger right here. The DTR2 includes this two-stage trigger that has just that little bit of first stage take-up and then a 2-pound pull. The Geissele SSA and all the other two-stage Geissele triggers that I've tried out, they all have some creep in them. It's 2 pounds is very, very light, but there is just a little bit of creep. If you want something that's maybe a bit crisper, but a little bit on the heavier side, you might go with the DTR instead of the DTR2. There's a trigger that's made actually here in town, here in Tulsa. It's called the Rise RA535. It was designed for 3-gun actually. It's a super, super crisp trigger. And the one that I tested out, it felt like just about nothing. They claim that it's 3.5 pounds, but the one that I pulled felt like it was considerably lower than that. It's a single stage trigger and crisper than you can imagine. In some ways, it's actually kind of dangerous. You have to watch it because you can get, since it is so light and so crisp, under recoil, you can bump fire your own gun, which is actually kind of funny. But that might be a good option to swap into here. If you want something a little bit crisper, you can just save a couple bucks getting the DTR instead of the DTR2 and then lose all that money again by getting in that extra crisp trigger. That might have been a little harsh evaluation of the Geissele SSA. The creep in the trigger I could really only notice when I was just testing the trigger around the house or when I was doing slow fire shooting, especially at long range. That's when I could feel that little bit of creep and then the final snap. When it came time to shoot moving targets or deal with the hog, for example, the trigger is so light at that 2 pounds, and I was pulling the trigger so deliberately that really the lack of that little bit of crispness didn't really affect much. One thing that I must point out about the handguard is that with its Picatinny on top and its M-LOK on the sides and bottom, you are kind of restricted in the market in some ways. It's kind of difficult to get a bipod that can attach directly via M-LOK, so you're going to end up stacking up some adapters in order to get a standard bipod attached to this, and I don't like that system at all. It's going to make it a little bit more tippy. It's going to put your fulcrum a little bit lower down so that you're going to feel like you're balancing on top of something, and that's why if you do buy one of these, I recommend that you check out this bipod right here. This is the UTG Recon Flex. This is the 8-inch to 11.8-inch model. This is the one that I recommend you take a look at. They have these for Keymod and M-LOK. And this, I think, fixes a whole bunch of problems all at once. First, it is direct M-LOK attachment, so you don't need heavy adapters. And it really puts your center of gravity, as far as the bipod is concerned, it puts it all lower. So you're kind of sitting down inside the bipod instead of balancing up on top of it over here. I think that's a major issue, and I think that this is a great solution for it. Check out the full review that I put together over here. If I needed to outfit this rifle with optics over again, I would probably do the exact same thing. The HDMR2 from Bushnell, with its H59 reticle in the first focal plane, its great big turrets, and a very flexible zoom range, and then that Warren 20 MOA mount that you see right there, that's the X-Scale 20 MOA. Put those two together, and this rifle was up for any challenge. Whatever we did, this all worked out really well. Now, we did have some other rings that we used at one point. We used some of the Weaver, I think they were the high rings on here, in order to get clearance with the bell right here. Those worked out just fine. That was for, basically a flat setup overall. But in order to get out to those longer ranges, we needed to get a little bit of extra compensation. So we went with this Warren 20 MOA mount. Highly recommended. This, when you remove it, these are actually the Warren tools for torquing these things down and taking them off. This little wrench right here actually makes a little beep and lights up when you've reached your 65 inch-pounds of torque on the screws right there, on the nuts. And then we also have this little T-handle wrench right here for the Torx screws up top. And these two working together, yeah, I could take this mount off in the field, remount it if I needed to, and it always came back exactly to zero. It worked out very well in every case, and it did give us that extra 20 MOA so that we could get the rifle out to a mile. Target time. This was the very first ammo that I put through the rifle. This is Federal Gold Medal Berger 130 grain open tip match ammo, and the other rifles that I shot did not like it at all. I was blown away the first time that I fired this. This is actually the very first set of rounds through the rifle in my possession. And you can see that we have these 4 shots right here clustered at 0.64 inches. The wind switched on me for this shot, and I hadn't been paying attention. And so it did throw it the other direction. It was a pretty stiff breeze that just suddenly whipped over the other way. And that opened it up to 1.53. If the wind had all been steady, yeah, it would have all just been right in this tiny little group. I was just blown away when I first shot it. I actually started laughing while I was on the line. So it's that Federal Gold Medal Berger. The very next thing that I shot was just some hand-loaded ammo that I developed for the Stealth Evolution. This is Speer Hot Core 140 grain. This has Reloader 16 behind it. And yeah, these function very well in there, as you can see. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely decent for hunting anyway. We're looking at 1.190 inches. If I wanted to tune up one specifically for this rifle, I could do that. I did some subsonics later, but I don't think I ever did a supersonic of this. Now we get into real hand loading, and everything except for the subsonics was based on Reloader 16, probably the most amazing powder that I have tried yet. I've been a Varget man for a very long time, but this is winning me over on these kind of medium cartridges like 6.5 Creedmoor. Since I got the best performance with the Stealth Evolution using these Hornady 140 grain boat tail hollow point match bullets, I just went right ahead on the CMMG using those, and here are the results. All right, so my sighter group, you can see, is quite small, and that is a trend that I noticed basically with any of the hand loading that I did. It definitely has a very solid node, 6.5 Creedmoor, down in like the 2600s somewhere. It likes to move out a little bit slowly, but if you have a powder like this one that you can crank it up a little bit faster, you can get into some really solid loads as well. So here we go. There's the actual first. That's a bit over 1 inch. Starting to tighten up a little bit, 0.92. 0.73, that's good, but I think we can do better. Opening up to 1.2 inches. And here's the good stuff, 0.47 inches. I'm doing all 3-shot groups on this, mostly to save money. But yeah, you can see that these tightened up really nicely. Opening up just slightly, 0.61 for our final charge. I did not do a 7th on this one. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. I was kind of concerned about max pressures sometime. So I topped out this one. And actually one of the things that I should mention about Reloader 16 and why you should probably buy yourself a jug of this stuff and get to work with it, it gets these bullets moving quite fast. So we're talking about, in this case, I think these are moving out about 2,800 feet per second. It might be down in the 2,700s with this load right here. But one of the neat things is that even going based on Quick Load's estimations, I never really got into any high pressure situations. I never got into any scary territory loading this stuff up. It moves out really fast, but it also does not get into any nasty pressures easily. Very, very fine powder. 140 grain ELDM from Hornady, again using Reloader 16. There's our cider group. Group number 1, which came in at 0.6 inches. 0.9, just barely under 1 inch on group number 2. Group 3 opens up to 1.47. Back down to about 0.9 for group 4. Almost up to 1 inch again on group 5. And then group 6, 1.26. So this one was a little bit disappointing. Yes, that 0.6 inches that we got on group number 1 is nice, but these are moving out pretty slowly with this powder charge, so it kind of negates the effect. It's nice to have that extra slick bullet, but if they're moving out much slower than the BTHP match, I'm just going to stick with the BTHP match that seems to have a little bit of a better optimized load anyway. So I never really got into shooting the ELDs. I'm going to give these a chance for redemption in the project rifle coming up soon. We're going to be doing some of the 140s and 147s, so make sure you don't miss that. And now for a bullet that I think you handloaders are going to find very exciting. I've been very pleased to be able to test these new Speer Gold Dot rifle bullets. You guys have heard of the Gold Dot handgun bullets. They're kind of the gold standard for hollow points for defensive loads. Well, they have made some rifle bullets now. Again, these are designed for defensive use. These should also be excellent hunting bullets. They have a pretty high BC, despite the fact that, yes, they do have an exposed lead tip, so they don't have a pointed bullet or anything like that, but it is still apparently a very efficient bullet, again with Reloader 16 behind it. And let's check out what we did with this. All right, so there's the cider group. A nice small group, yet again, it just loves those ciders. Group number 1, we're looking at 0.42 inches. Oh, this is looking good. 0.62 inches on group number 2. Group 3 opens up to 1.6. 0.43 again on group number 4. And then everything else opens up a little bit. So we get 0.71 on group 5, 0.8 on group 6, and then 0.91 on group 7. And this was pretty stable conditions. This was about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So I think that the results that we're getting here are pretty typical of what we're going for. The one that I stuck with is group 4 here. We get a nice small group, 0.43. And yeah, I'm really eager to see what these bullets can do when out hunting. I really want to use these the next time we go out hog hunting to see how they perform. I expect these to mushroom uniformly and do some really wonderful work because they do shoot flat, they shoot tight, and I'm guessing they're going to hit like a freight train. One really cool thing about the CMMG is that if I switch ammunitions from one type to another, if I'm out hunting and want to try something else, I don't really have to adjust the scope. These two really print at about the same point of aim. And then the Speer Gold Dot at the back, that one prints about 0.3 milliradians low, so I have to bring it up just a couple of clicks, which is pretty amazing. That's one of the really nice things that you're going to get from a high-quality rifle like the Stealth Evolution, like this CMMG. These are ones where kind of no matter what ammo you put through it, it's not going to wander all over the place. And that's a factor that you might consider when you're going to purchase a rifle.
All right, so we've talked about parts, we've talked about accuracy, but then when the rubber hits the road, how does this rifle actually perform out in these challenges that I put together? Some of you that have been longtime subscribers, you know that I don't just test an accuracy and then say that the rifle is good or whatever. I go out and I handcraft challenges to test each rifle in scenarios that I think they're designed to function in. And in this case, we did a whole bunch just because this rifle just kept wanting to do all kinds of new stuff. I've got a little cheat sheet so I don't forget any that I've actually done because there have been so many. First off, we took this out to shoot at moving targets. So anywhere from 200 yards, 300 yards, back to 600 yards, we were shooting a kind of human silhouette target that was being held over the head of a guy down in the pit. So he was walking, jogging, running back and forth. And then we would take shots with this at those various ranges. We had a ballistic chart all worked up so that we knew what our leads should be. We accounted for a little bit of wind. Most of the wind was to our back, but yeah, this was definitely up to the challenge. And that's what kind of gave me the idea to go out and do some hog hunting with this, especially because the whole combination of the rifle, the scope, it all added up to very easily being able to track along with moving targets. Next, we took it out to 1,000 yards, where it performed very well once we figured out where our bullets were actually striking. We had a lot of difficulty lately figuring out where our bullets were actually hitting out at our long-range shooting fields. We just didn't get a lot of spray off, dust, hits on the ground. Sometimes we had wheat and corn in the way. But eventually, once we did figure out where this was hitting, yeah, it was shooting some pretty tight groups out at 1,000 yards. If we could actually get a better view, then we'd be able to figure things out a little bit quicker. So we did actually take this out to a mile after that success, and yes, it did make impacts. Again, we had difficulty seeing where it was actually striking, but we were hitting the bottom of the target pretty consistently. We were actually striking the road out in front of it. So we're going to come back out with this, actually this coming weekend. We're going to get back out at a mile with a big steel target and a target camera so we can see a little bit better. And we're going to try to hit that target as many times as possible. It's going to be a lot of fun. We did some speed shooting with this next, where we set up some kind of smaller targets, clay pigeons, anywhere from, I believe it was about 160 yards out to 425 yards, and then we just really quickly hit some of our poppers repeatedly, and then hit a clay pigeon, hit poppers again, and then hit a kind of a smaller square target out at 425. This rifle is one, since it is semi-automatic, it wants to jump from target to target really quickly. This excelled in that kind of shooting. And that's another one that indicated this would be good for hog hunting or coyote hunting, where you may have multiple targets all at once and you want to clear them out before they can get to the edge of the field that you're in or whatever, or you want to be able to take a quick follow-up shot. Yeah, this thing really works in that kind of scenario. We took this into a shoot. We were going to try to get that mile again, but we had some issues with corn, so we got out to 1,280 yards, and we were very consistently tagging our big old steel target out at that distance, even though we couldn't actually see impacts in this case because of the mirage. That video is forthcoming. You might have to wait a second for that one. We shot subsonics with this, so we did a little bit of destruction testing to see if a 6.5 Creedmoor subsonic bullet would do some damage. Yes, it does. And what kind of sound it would make going past a microphone, because we did find that Hollywood pew sound with some of our ammo. And yeah, this did actually reproduce that same sound. And yeah, make sure you check out that full playlist. We have all kinds of wild sound tests. I'll put a link to that around here. So yeah, like I alluded to, we did the hog hunt, we did the coyote hunt, and the rifle performed brilliantly in both situations. The ammo that we used is this right here. You can see that we have a few different ones that we loaded up. We talked about those in accuracy testing. But if I had to pick just one round of ammunition to kind of keep my rifle stuck with and just use it for everything, it would be this one. These Hornady BTHP 140 grain match bullets. with some Reloader 16 behind them, CCI bench rest primers. These performed extremely well in all situations, including the terminal ones. So this is what we use for shooting 1,000 yards at 1 mile. And then when it came time to shoot the hogs or the coyotes, yeah, these had lots of good terminal performance that I was kind of wondering, since it's not designed for hunting, I was wondering how they would work. But yeah, it seems like they tumbled very well, made nice big exit wounds, and we didn't have any lingering animals. It seemed to just drop them right in their tracks. Great ammunition there. And then the whole setup, as you see right here with the Bushnell HDM R2, it all added up to just a really good hog hunting machine. And I think you're going to see more videos in the future. If we can get back out and shoot at some hogs again, I think this is going to be a pretty special hog killer right here. This is just designed for it. A little bit heavier bullets than you're going to get from an AR-15, moving a lot faster, and actually out at those longer ranges, this is going to deliver more energy than a 308. And of course, this rifle does actually come in 308, so if you want to be able to bring a little bit more energy at the closer distances, or you're just playing like that cartridge, you have that option as well. After each challenge or hunt, I would collect notes in a Word document to remind myself of some of the peculiarities, some of the things that happened with the rifle as we continued our testing. So we're going to dig into some of these, and the first has to do with feeding. This rifle fed, extracted, ejected very reliably, except in a few cases. And essentially, this comes down to user. It has nothing to do with the rifle. It really has to do with the way that I particularly used it. We did have some initial stoppages because I did not lube the rifle straight out of the box. I just took it out to the field and started shooting. I'm always kind of curious to see how it's going to function, just straight from the manufacturer's case or whatever. And as a lot of people have found out with other rifles, the lube tends to dry up a little bit in transit to your house. So once I put some of the Slip 2000 on here that they actually include in the box, that was a really nice little addition. Everything started working just fine. It has fed very reliably since, except I did put a kind of mesh brass catcher on here, one of the floppy kind, and its opening wasn't really all that wide, so the brass would eject and kind of get jammed up in there. Once I fixed up the brass catcher and put a big sheet of Kydex to hold that aperture open, then we didn't have any more problems with that. The only other stoppages that I've run into just have to do with dirt. I have never actually cleaned this rifle since probably the initial cleaning. Again, I wanted to kind of see how it functioned as we went along, and it probably would go through, I don't know, maybe 1,000 rounds of the ammunition that I've cooked up. My hand loads are pretty clean. If it weren't for this, we did do quite a bit of shooting with a suppressor. This is a YHM Titanium Phantom 7.62 quick detach silencer, and as many of you know, that tends to build up pressure backward. It also builds up a lot of dirt. And so right now the chamber is actually pretty filthy, and it's pretty much refusing to feed ammo. It just kind of sticks in there. So I've got to get in, clean up the chamber. I've got to clean up the bore too, and then it should be right as rain. I think I'm going to take this off as well. Now, as far as shooting suppressed, it did work very well. We used the suppressor when we were shooting the hogs and when we were shooting the coyotes, and it worked out very well. It was perfectly effective. It didn't seem to affect accuracy at all. A lot of the time, these actually can improve accuracy, possibly due to weight. We don't exactly know why these things perform the way they do. But then the sound performance was excellent. Kedrick and I when we were doing our coyote hunting, we were basically up in a metal box up on stilts, and a lot of that noise that you're going to get when you fire an AR-10 or an AR-15 is going to come from these little ports right here. But really, it didn't ring our bell that bad. It didn't leave us with our ears ringing or anything after shooting. So that's a good testament to the suppressor here and just the way that that all worked out. When it came to reloading, there is a very tight chamber in here, and this is one of the greatest selling points about this rifle. This does not have a big sloppy chamber like you're going to get with a lot of semi-autos. A big sloppy chamber is going to help with feeding. It's going to make it more reliable to feed in and extract. You're just going to have a couple extra thousandths to work with. But in this case, they kept it really tight, which I think is one of the big reasons why this rifle is as precise as it is. And then it's also going to help with your brass stretching. One of the factors that I've been really, really happy with. Every time I would get the brass that I had fired through here, get it cleaned up, get it resized, I found that I barely had to resize my brass, which is going to extend the life of it. And so, of course I have to do full length sizing. I can't just do neck sizing with this because we are running a semi-auto. If I were to do neck sizing, it would probably just jam up and not work anymore. But yeah, the brass was only barely scratched in each case. And I barely had to set that shoulder back at all. And most of the time I didn't even have to trim the neck. That's the part that really shocks me. My AR-15 is a very fine when it's a Rock River 223 Wilde chamber. And with that one, every time I resize, I have to trim the neck. In this case, all I had to do usually was trim about a third of them. And I think that is a testament to just the precision of the rifle. And it's actually kind of amazing that with a chamber that tight that this can feed as reliably as it does. Way to go, CMMG. I think they found a really neat balance there. In the final analysis, what is the CMMG Mark III DTR2? Is this something that you would want to have in your safe? To me, this is the benchmark semi-auto rifle. It couples great precision with a couple of excellent cartridge choices and great reliability as long as you keep it lubed up and you keep that chamber clean if you're running suppressed. It has performed extremely well in all the situations that we've thrown at it. If you are a plain state hunter or out in the desert where your targets are going to be a little further out and you're going to have a chance to get a bit supported either on a bipod, tripod, shooting stick, some kind of rest, this rifle is going to work for you. And it's going to be able to not only lay down very accurate fire for that first shot, but if you need to take a second, like for example against hogs or maybe pronghorn where you have a variety of targets that you can choose from, you're going to be able to get that follow-up shot off really fast. If you just want to plink in the desert, knock some steel down, this is going to be a great choice. Again, it is really fun to have that follow-up shot, so after you've smacked a target, you can just smack it again. Sometimes you can get that bullet in the air before the first one has actually made an impact, and that's a kind of a neat feeling. This is one that can work really well if you actually want to do some F-class shooting, I think. In the factory class, you're never going to be able to compete against the guys in the open class that have the big heavy guns and all the specialized equipment. But I think this would be a really fun one to take out either at the 600-yard match or the 1,000-yard match and be able to compete against guys that have brought out their Ruger RPRs or the Savage Stealth Evolution that we tested earlier, or maybe the Barrett MRAD, that kind of thing. I think this would perform well against those. And then when it comes to comparing this rifle to some of the others that we've tested in the past, we're talking about the Savage Model 10 GRS, the Savage Stealth Evolution. Both of those were in 6.5 Creedmoor as well. Both of those were launching the same hand-loaded bullets. Basically the same recipe. I just had to tweak each one to work with each individual rifle and be optimized precision-wise for each rifle. This one, I would say, is not quite as accurate as that Stealth Evolution. The Stealth Evolution is still one of the most precise rifles I've ever tested. That thing consistently shot much smaller groups. Even when I was doing my load workups, the groups that would open up to show that they were not optimized for the rifle, they were still considerably smaller than groups that I would see on other rifles. So that one is very special. If you want to be able to just get that one shot, make it count, then that's the rifle for you. If, however, you want to be able to get nearly that level of precision, then this CMMG is really, it's going to do the work. As you saw, it was totally capable out at 1,000 yards. It's going to be capable out at a mile. We can get this out and retest it. It has just almost all that precision, but you do get that semi-auto capability right here so that you can get that follow-up shot if you have to, which I think is going to be really handy in hunting situations. When I was shooting that hog, sprinting 400 yards away, I don't know that I could have done that with a bolt-action rifle, just because you're going to upset the rifle so much by knocking the bolt back, throwing it back forward. You have, just the speed of having to do that, whereas this is doing it all itself. I don't know if I could have gotten off that final shot and taken the hog down. Maybe we'll have to test that in the future. That sounds fine to me. As far as price goes, the Model 10 GRS, which has, I think, the same level of precision as this rifle, that starts at $1,100. If you want to get the Stealth Evolution, that's about $1,400 right now, and that's your actual retail price. This one costs about $1,900. And for that, just remember that yes, you are spending, a good sum extra, but if you need that semi-auto capability, this is the rifle for you.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These two videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, The Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.